welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we are going to talk about everybody's two most favorite subjects in the whole world, death and money. Maybe not, but unfortunately these two tend to go hand in hand quite a bit. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. But first, I hope you enjoyed my episode last week with one of Andrew's episodes from Our Last Meal podcast. I thought that was a nice little idea he had for us to do a little feed swap and kind of get into each other's audiences a little bit. I cannot recommend his podcast enough. And I'm not just saying that because I aired one of his episodes. I really do listen to his podcast. I listen to every episode. And he is just a wonderful man, and I love what he does. So please check that out. And as always, I have to remind you, I don't have to, I choose to remind you, you can find me on Patreon. If you were to support me on Patreon, you would be helping me out so much. I have been a busy little person meeting with all sorts of different organizations around the Central Ohio area. And I spoke with one who was hoping I could possibly provide some pro bono grief support. And I would absolutely love to do that. But in order to be providing pro bono work, I can't say it's not really pro bono because I have bills to pay. And I would love to be able to give more of my time, but it's difficult for me to do when I'm not making enough money to pay my bills. So yeah, I'm out here asking y'all for money. If you would be so inclined, I would love to have you be a supporter of mine on Patreon. And it's not without its merits. You do get access to my podcast a week early, which, yay, I don't know. You just get to feel special knowing that you heard it before anybody else did. But you also get grief affirmations. You will get free access to my workshops. I just finished writing a workbook. You'll get that for free as well as soon as it's published. I'm not done yet. It's coming, I promise. Actually, by the time this airs, it's probably out there, but you can get free access to that and plenty of other content. I'll be hopefully hosting some Q&As at some point when I get more patrons to ask me the Q's that I can A. So yeah, I would love to be able to be providing much more support out there. And believe me, if I could give my services away for free to everybody, I would, because I honest to God do care. That's why I can't imagine somebody doing this line of work and not caring. So, but unfortunately, this is the society we live in. So here we are, me asking you for money. So head on over to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula and support me a little. It would mean so much to me and to hopefully some others that I can provide free work for. Okay? Awesome. All right. So without further ado, let's start talking about death and money because, that's exciting. Unfortunately, these two things tend to go hand in hand. And the first thing people think about a lot is funeral expenditures. And I will talk briefly about that. I'm not going to get on a soapbox. I always say that, and I always do. But I'm going to make the effort not to get on a soapbox today. But funerals cost money. That's just the way of it. It's a service that's being provided. And just like I provide services, I have to pay my bills because people are providing services to me, like my home, my internet, the electricity. But somebody's providing a service, they need to get paid for it, right? So funerals do cost money. And this is a sticking point for a lot of people because funerals are not cheap. And there are some reasons for that. And some of them are good reasons and some of them are not so good reasons. And I'm not going to get into what is good and bad. This is not my call to make. And I am not a funeral director. But there are definitely companies, and it's not just funeral industry, that mark up prices of things significantly higher than they need to make more money. That's just how capitalism works, guys. And again, not going to say good or bad here. This is just something that happens. The average funeral cost in the United States right now is between $7,000 and $12,000. So let that sink in for a minute. $7,000 is a lot of money. $12,000 is a lot of money. If you sit back and think about your average working person, can they afford to drop $12,000 at a moment's notice? Likely not. Now, yes, things like life insurance does exist, and that can help prepare for you for some of these costs financially. So there's step one. I hope you have a life insurance policy. And there's different types of life insurance. There's term life insurance and whole life insurance. Term is only good for a certain period of time. If you outlive that period of time, you don't get any money. And you gave this insurance company a whole lot of money for nothing, which is why employers tend to give their employees term life insurance. I'm not crapping on employers. It makes sense, right? You have that insurance policy for as long as you work there, because most people, not all, most people aren't going to die while they're still working for that company. They might, and at that point, the life insurance will pay out. But a lot of times, they're banking on you leaving that place before you need that life insurance policy. So know the differences in life insurance policies before you buy them, okay? I got people I can send you to. I know plenty of people that deal in like life insurance and different things that are actually reputable, and they're not gonna squeeze you out of money you don't have. But they can at least give you the proper advice that they've given me or anybody else, you know? But know your life insurances. Know what it's going to cover. This is where reading the fine print comes in handy, guys. It sucks. Nobody wants to read that 53-page document of terms and conditions anymore. But that's where a lot of this stuff is. And then when you go to use your insurance and they say, we don't cover that, it was in the document you signed. A lot of people are like, wait, what? Myself included. I've been there, done that. So just make sure you're reading the fine print. So back to funerals. They're incredibly expensive, and for a lot of different reasons, right? There's the cost of using their space for the actual service. There is the cost of the casket, which is huge. There's the cost of possibly a burial vault. There's embalming, and then there's administrative fees. We won't get into that right now. No, there'll be extra fees that you don't know about. So a couple things you should know is that according to the FCC, future editing, Nikki here jumping in to say FTC, not FCC. So sorry about that. Everybody in the funeral industry is required to give you a price list before you buy anything or before you sign anything. So it is your right to request a price list. Now, there was some talks that happened in the fall last year about adding some additional items to the funeral rule. This is called the funeral rule. I'm sorry, my Midwestern accent has a hard time saying funeral rule. Rural juror. Anyway, they were trying to add in that they are going to be required to give their price list electronically. And as far as I know, that is not in action yet. I don't know if it will be. But so most all funeral industries are required to give you a price list. But I guarantee you most of them are going to make you come in. They're going to make you come in and sit down with them, make an appointment, and then they're going to upsell you, and they're going to make you feel bad, and they're preying on your grief, okay? But if they're really, really nice and reputable, and you say, can you please just send it to me, they might, okay? So it's worth asking, but they are required to give you a price list up front, and they're required to give it to you itemized, so you know exactly what you're paying for. They can't say, well, everything's going to be $10,000. No, they'll break it down. This is what this costs, and then you can pick and choose what you want. You guys have these options. You can pick and choose what you want. And if they tell you that your loved one is required to be embalmed, there is no law. There is no law anywhere in the United States that mandates somebody has to be embalmed. Now, if you're planning on having a funeral with an open casket, yeah, they will likely need to be embalmed unless the funeral is happening the same day. That is just for the comfort of everybody viewing the body. I won't get into the icky details on that, but if they say that is their policy, that's not a law. So just know that. They might tell you also that a vault is required. That is also not true. It might be a policy of the cemetery where your loved one will be buried. So that's a question you can ask the cemetery, because there, again, no laws anywhere that require a vault, a burial vault, okay? Your cheapest option typically is going to be direct cremation. That's still going to cost, that could still cost you about $1,000 or $1,200 to $1,500. It really depends on where you go. So regardless of what you do, something's going to cost money. And it sucks, and I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you it won't, but one would hope you would have loved ones that will help you with that if need be, if there's no insurance. If you're part of any type of community, don't be afraid to ask for help, you know? Like, hey guys, my loved one died unexpectedly. It's $1,500 for direct cremation, and I don't have that. I'm sure somebody might be able to help you out with that, okay? And hopefully, if not, the funeral home would be willing to work out some type of payment situation. If they don't, find another funeral home. Okay. Oh boy. So let's move away from funerals because I tend to get upset. So let's talk about, oh gosh, you guys, this is going to be such a boring episode. Let's talk about wills and probate. Oh goodness. I attended a really, really great webinar that talked all about probate, end of life financial planning, and legal planning, things like that. I usually encourage people, especially when it comes to a final will, to talk to an attorney because I am not an attorney and there are laws that I might not fully understand or know. I fully admit that. I'm not an attorney. I'm a death doula. But there are some things I do know that I'm going to share with you right now for free. First of all, just a word of caution when you're working with an attorney. If you work with an attorney and have them help you process your final will, there's a good chance that they will tell you, I'm going to hold on to the original copy of your will because if something happens to your home, if your home burns down, or if, God forbid there's a flood or something happens to this original document, the courts won't take copies. That is true. Courts will not use copies of a will as a legal document. They will use the original, and that's that. Now, that said, the reason why the attorney will offer to hold on to that for you is to force you to use them when the time comes. Because if they have that original document and your loved one dies, you have to use them because they're basically holding that original will hostage. Why are they doing that? Why do they want you to stick with them to go through the process of probate? Well, they can charge you money for that. They can charge you anywhere 5 to 7% of whatever it is you are receiving. So let's say you are left $200,000 by a relative. If the attorney only takes 5% of that, that is $10,000 you will not get. If they charge a bigger percent, that's more money you won't get. So this is why I encourage people to make sure you have the original copies of your documents. You can go to Walmart and buy a fireproof safe for probably $50. You can get a safety deposit box likely from your bank for free if you have an account with them, or maybe a small fee per year so it's not in your home. Keep those documents. Or if you have an attorney you really, really, really trust, let them keep it, okay? If you really want them to use it. But that is because these wills must go through probate. Now, there are ways to avoid that. You don't have to have stuff go through probate, right? If you just have a blanket will that's like, I want, any money, anything I have to go back to my family in this will, so beeth, so saith I. It's going to have to go through a probate, but there's some ways around that. You can set up a trust. Trusts will avoid that. That's a great way to go. And I know a little bit about trusts, but not a lot. So again, unfortunately, this is something you might have to go to an attorney for or a really good financial planner. There is another great way, and I've done this myself. There's another beautiful gift you can give your family. Go to your bank. I believe you have to go in person to do this. I know I did. But go to your financial institution of choosing where your accounts are held and let them know you'd like to complete a payable on death document. The payable on death is basically setting somebody up as a beneficiary for your bank account. And you'll have to sign a bunch of papers. You'll have to have that person's information, social security number, who they are, whatever. I went in, my husband is not listed on my bank account right now. It's just in my name, right? So if I die, he can't just walk in and be like, my wife's dead, give me her money. That'd be great, but you can't do that. But he is now listed as the beneficiary for my bank account. So he brings in the death certificate. It's like, my wife is gone. Here's my information. Here's a death certificate. They will grant him access to my account or cash it out, give him the money, however that works. So these are things you can do to avoid going through probate. Do have to add on here too. Do not just give your family members your logins to your bank accounts. If I were to just give my husband my username and password for my bank account and he went in there after I died and withdrew all the money, that is fraud and he could go to jail for that. So don't just give people your logins to your your bank accounts. Okay, make sure you do it the right way. Do not give people your logins to your bank accounts, just as a rule. Okay, if you are in the case of, maybe you are incapacitated for a while, this is when a financial power of attorney would be very useful. If you have a severe illness that might leave you incapacitated for a period of time, or, if God forbid you're in an accident, you're in a coma for a period of time, but you will, improve, hopefully, having a financial power of attorney is what you would want to do for that situation, because you're still alive, so they can't be a beneficiary. So having somebody to manage your finances on your behalf is what the financial power of attorney would do. So get that done as well. I guess what I'm getting at here, get your crap done ahead of time, okay? The more you can do ahead of time, the better. And these are all things I help my clients work through, is what is appropriate, what is not, what can they do, what can't they do, and what can we do ahead of time. So money and death unfortunately go hand in hand. It's icky, but it's just how things are right now, right? So we have to make informed decisions and know that we're doing things correctly so that we're not taken advantage of. As always, the best thing you can do is get stuff in writing, right? But having a little bit more knowledge on hand, like this whole thing about probate, a lot of people don't understand that. Heck, I didn't understand that until a few years ago. I learned a lot when my brother died unexpectedly, because all his minor possessions and stuff had to go through a probate. It was kind of a hassle, but the more you can do ahead of time, the better. Okay? Make sure you get your paperwork done and make sure it's done properly. If you don't understand what needs done, this is where people like me or an attorney or other financial planners can help. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Yeah, you're probably going to have to pay for somebody to help you with this. That's, again, unfortunately how the world works. But if you really are in a jam, legal aid is a thing that exists for people who don't have that kind of income or don't have the financial means to hire an attorney. You can go reach out to legal aid and they might be able to help you. Okay? All right. This is boring. I'm sorry, but it's necessary, right? I'm hoping there was something today I said that made you go, oh no, I better take care of that right now. Or, oh my God, I did not know that. So if so, you're welcome. If not, I'm sorry you sat through this episode. But now that we are at the end of the episode, it is time for the Death Deck. Woo! Although this time it's the End of Life deck. So I'm going to shuffle up my cards. Okay, so being dependent on others, A, is horrible. I want nothing to do with this for as long as possible. B, is unavoidable. I don't like it, but I know I will need the help. Or C, allows for deeper connections and makes me feel loved. And this, by being dependent on others, that means at the end of life or with, an illness. So is what that card is referring to, not just in general. For myself, I'm kind of a combination of all three. I really don't like being dependent on others, but I also know it's unavoidable and I will need help in the future. But I agree, it does allow for deeper connections, and it would make me feel incredibly loved if I were very, very sick. And believe me, guys, I think about my own mortality all the time. I can't not because of what I do. But I think about if I were in the situation of my clients, and I like to try to, have decisions and plans ahead of time, but I would like to think that I know my family would be at my side. They would do anything for me. I know my husband would. I have several close friends that would give up a day to come be with me if they needed to. They would do things for me, and I love that. And it does make me feel loved. So I don't love it. I don't love the idea of being dependent on others. I'm a strongly independent person. I have control issues. I fully admit that. And being dependent on others bothers me, but I also know that it's going to happen. And I know that there are people out there that love me enough that they would do that. And I like that. How about you? I'd be curious what you think. I would love to hear what you think about the podcast too. You could do just 2 seconds out of your time and leave me a review. That would be incredibly helpful. Not just for my ego. It's nice to hear when people like my show, of course, but if you leave a review and even say a few words about why you like my show, it helps the algorithm so more people can find my podcast. And better yet, tell a friend about it. If there's somebody in your life you think would really enjoy this, tell them. That's the easiest thing you can do, and probably the most impactful. So that would be awesome. The other most impactful thing you could do would be to join my Patreon, like I told you at the top of the show. I won't go into that again. You know where I am. I harp on it every episode. But you can also reach out to me if you have questions or comments about any of the content, or me, or my show, or my services. You can find me at nikkithedeathdoula.com, and you can reach out to me there. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Nikki the Death Doula. I'm there. I like to hear from you guys. Okay, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, as always, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck.